Hi everyone, I'm Daryl, and I've been teaching for 10 years now and have guided thousands of students to excel at their O levels. Every year, I interact with about 100 plus students weekly and guide them towards their national exams. Now, the fun fact is this: every batch of my students achieve high 60 or 70% distinction rate, nearly double that of the national average. Now, what is interesting is that people tend to think that it is the students from the top schools that do well. This is not true at all because I have students from seemingly average schools making it to Hwa Chong or RI every year. So it's really more about the individual students themselves than the school that they're in. So never let your environment dictate your outcome. You decide your own outcome. What is more intriguing is that I notice a common pattern and a set of traits that these top performing students typically possess. They all have the same mentality when it comes to their academics that allows them to ultimately achieve academic excellence. And I intend to share with you the secrets to what makes them top academic performers. After watching this video, I promise you have a much clearer idea of how to become a top performing student yourself. You can then incorporate these traits and transform your academic journey. It is not about the IQ, but the mindset and habits that you build that will ensure your success. Tip number one: these students are all very deliberate. The top performing students all have this common trait. They all take charge of their own learning and are very clear in terms of what they want to gain from every single lesson they attend. They do not assume that the teacher will spoon feed them forever and actually take charge of their own learning. They are clear about the fact that they are responsible for their own learning and ultimately, they are the one that control their own academic journey. They recognize that at the end of the day, they can only count on themselves to achieve academic excellence as no one truly cares about your academic or future as much as you should. It is your life and your future. This starts with you being very clear with your goals and the outcomes you're looking for. This translates to knowing exactly what you want your L1, R5 to be or which JC you want to enter. Then start working backwards from there. Look at the subjects that you will likely be using for your L1, R5 and see what subjects will need the most immediate help. Then make an action plan and execute on it. Now, let me share with you 5 exact steps that you can take to ensure that you're being very deliberate with your learning. Firstly, come to class prepared. That means homework completed. Only when you do your homework, you can then identify which questions you're actually struggling with. You can then use the lesson to review the questions to improve from there. Second one, pre-read the chapter and the content that you're learning from the lesson. Identify questions that you have and ensure that those doubts that you have are clarified through the lesson itself. This ensures that you will not have any gaps in your learning. As a tutor, I love it when a student come to class ready and ask intelligent questions that enhances their understanding of the content. Thirdly, review your learnings at the end of each day. Ensure that all the content learned is well understood and identify any doubts you will need to clarify with your teacher or your tutor. Scientifically speaking, you will tend to forget up to 70% of what you learn within 3 days unless you review to retain that knowledge. So don't waste your effort. Review your learning to make learning truly effective. Next, complete your TYS topical as your school is covering the content to reinforce your own learning. I recommend doing the MCQ and Section A short structured questions for science. Those questions are a lot more manageable and will serve as a very good test to see if your understanding of the chapter and concepts are sound. Lastly, plan ahead for tests and weighted assessment to avoid last minute panic. Generally, I recommend preparing 2 weeks in advance for topical tests and WAs. For exams, minimally 1 month in advance. If you do not prepare ahead, you are setting yourself up for failure. It is very important to be deliberate with your learning and taking action. Narrow down what are the specific chapters you're weakest in and look for your teacher for consultation or seek online resources or watch videos on YouTube. Be very deliberate with your actions. Set a target for yourself, and you'll find that it's a lot easier to find the intrinsic motivation to work harder. Know what you want and work towards it. Being deliberate with your action also means allocating time for work and time to rest. You can block out time every day for focused work and set aside a solid 1 to 2 hours for quality rest and for your hobbies. I'm a big believer of work hard, play hard. It is always the person with the clearest idea of what they want to achieve that ends up achieving it. Being deliberate with your goals and actions is the key to success. When it comes to top performing students, I truly don't think it's about the IQ, but it's about having the right mentality and taking ownership of your own learning progress. Remember, nobody is responsible for your academics. Ultimately, you are the one that's responsible for your own learning. And the sooner you come to terms with that, the sooner you'll become an empowered student that view every single lesson as an opportunity to learn. The next trait is being consistent. What I realize about top performing students is the fact that they are very consistent with their homework and revision. Consistency in terms of setting aside time every week to complete their homework and coming to every class ready to learn. They don't have off days, just because they don't feel like it. Simply put, no excuses. They are always coming to class prepared, meaning they did their pre-reading of the chapter or what will be covered during the class and have completed their homework. Some even have questions ready to ask in class, as they probably struggled with a certain question type in the worksheet. This group of students are not necessarily the super smart ones like the ones with the high IQ, but they are the ones that are the most hardworking. Majority of students that come to tuition with me actually only started with me after their Sec 3 end of year exams. And at that point in time, they're either failing or barely passing. But why is it by the time they hit O levels, 70% of them are scoring a A1 or an A2? It's because they are consistent. So what I tell my students, the fact that there's really no shortcut to success. You really need to put in the work and to do your revision and the practices assigned. The secret here is that the top students understand that and work consistently over a long period of time. Now, I want you to imagine this. O level being a marathon, a full 42 km, 195 meters race. The consistent students are the ones that have maintained a sustainable pace, putting in the mileage day in, day out. Meanwhile, there are people that refuse to get started, hovering around the start line. There are also some students that make tiny little jogs only when they are pushed by their teachers or their tutors. Now, fast forward to a few months before O levels. Majority of the consistent students have already clocked the distance and are barely a few kilometers away from the finish line, the A1 that they're aiming for. But the people who have barely covered any distance are still way far back, even if they work extremely hard and study like 25 hours a day. Yes, I know one day only has 24 hours, but I'm just trying to get the point across. And they can be sprinting non-stop at the end. They will still never catch up with the consistent student. So understand this. Your learning is an accumulation of the work you put in since day one. A concept that you spend time to learn, applying it to questions, and learning the proper answering technique. That knowledge stays with you. On average, between the weekly worksheets, the revision packages, prelim papers, and mock exams that they are required to do as part of Overmugged's tuition program, most of my students will have clocked somewhere between 30 to 35 papers by the time they take their prelim or O levels. There is no way you don't do well if you have done so much work. So many students wonder, how can Overmugged have such high distinction rates for O levels? The secret I'll openly share is just consistent hard work over a long period of time. All my students know this and they know it's all about the grind. So being consistent here is the key. Achieving consistency is built via developing good habits and having good time management skills. The third trait that I think is very important is being proactive in your learning. That means taking charge and taking ownership of your own learning journey. The truth is that most of us are used to being spoon-fed by our teachers, and we kind of take that for granted. Now, there are all kinds of teachers. Assuming if you are lucky, you might get an excellent teacher that makes learning fun and engaging. However, there are also some teachers that might be more inexperienced or simply too busy. But a proactive student does not let the teacher dictate their learning. They seek to make the most out of their time. Now, think about it. If you're going to spend 1 hour in class anyway, why not use that time to maximize your learning so that when you go home, you can be relaxing or chilling instead of having to relearn everything again? Now, even if your teacher is inexperienced, you can still read the notes, search for resources online, or ask questions to help your learning. Never let a bad teacher be the reason why you give up or dislike a subject. Over here, I've outlined a few situations for you. Now, assuming you have a bad teacher and you are a bad student, you're guaranteed to get a bad result. But even with a good teacher and the student is unmotivated, that will not get you a good result as well. But having a bad teacher and you being a good student, you are able to achieve good results. And of course, the best combination of them all is with a good teacher and with a good student, you can achieve excellent results. Being proactive means looking at the learning outcomes stated in your syllabus and going into lessons with a clear learning intent. Don't wait for your teachers or other people to nudge you into action. Being a passive learner, meaning having others dictate your learning. Understand that your academics have a sizable impact on your future. So why would you pass that authority to somebody else? Imagine letting someone else determine your future choices. You'll be doing that if you become a passive learner. Being if you do learning passively, you end up with poorer grades and your future is affected. Why would you do that to yourself? So avoid being a passive learner. A passive learner is defined as somebody that only submits their homework when they are chased for it. They only study because a test or exam is upcoming. They do not actively seek to clarify their doubts or work on their correction for questions that they are unable to solve. You can argue that being proactive sounds like a lot of work, but ask yourself this. If you're going to be spending time in class and you'll be in school for 5 days a week, you might as well make the most out of it by being a proactive learner. So take charge of your own learning. You are the single best person that can keep track of your own learning progress. This means if you're uncertain about a certain chapter or concept, be proactive and seek help. Ask questions and seek clarifications from your teachers or tutors after class. The truth is that all teachers like eager learners. For myself, I always let my students know that there's truly no stupid question because every single question that you ask, it proves that the student is actively thinking and seeking clarity, and that is a positive sign of learning. Lastly, all of the top performing students are highly motivated. I'm talking about intrinsic motivation here. A top performing student doesn't need pushing or urging. They themselves understand why they're doing this. Now, I know a lot of students probably have this thought, like, why am I even learning this? Does this even have any relevance to my life? Will I ever use this knowledge? Now, what I like to say is that you're probably right. That 80% of what we learn in school will probably be useless in our day-to-day life. Who knows how artificial intelligence will grow? Perhaps all the knowledge that we acquire now is largely irrelevant by the time you enter the workforce. So why study so hard to absorb all of this knowledge? This is the reality. This is how society views every individual from a lens. Now, let me give you an example to illustrate that. Imagine right now that there are two candidates vying for the same job. Candidate A scored near perfect for their O levels and entered a top JC, and they proceeded on to score straight A's at A levels, secure a prestigious scholarship, and graduated from a top university. Let's contrast that with candidate B. They did okay for O level, they did enter JC, but they didn't do very well for A levels, and they barely graduated from a private university. Now, ask yourself this simple question. Which candidate do you think will stand a better chance at securing a well-paying job with better career prospects? What I'm not saying is that candidate B is worth less than candidate A, right? Candidate B could be very kind, friendly, and overall just an awesome human being. But when we do a side-to-side comparison, your track record is the simplest way somebody will judge you. Now, there's no guarantee that candidate A will necessarily perform better at work than candidate B, but the strong track record tells employers that candidate A is somebody that's willing to put in the hard work and have big goals for himself. These traits are what big companies are looking for in their candidates. So your academics don't and shouldn't define who you are as a person, but having great academic achievements do unlock more options for the future you. You might not choose to pursue a particular university course or career track, but at least you have the option to do so. If you don't do well academically, your options will become more limited. There isn't anything wrong with that. But if you ask me, I would rather have more options than less. So when it comes to developing a sense of intrinsic motivation to do well academically, I have a very simple message that I would like all students to hear. Do it for yourself. Why? Because it's your own future that you're affecting, not anyone else's, but your own. Having gone through the Singapore education system myself, I'm not going to deny that it's necessarily easy. And in fact, in recent years, it's just getting more and more competitive. It is normal to feel like giving up or to feel very overwhelmed with so many things coming your way all at once. But you need to know deep down why you're doing it. If you're doing it for your parents or for some extrinsic reward, that fire in you will not last. You must have the maturity to understand that the actions you take now will affect the future you. There's one last thought that I'd like to leave with you. Throughout my entire life, I do not have a single moment where I went, wow, I regret working so hard. If anything, it were the occasions where I didn't work hard enough that caused me to have regrets. So if you want to live a life with little regrets, I suggest that you dig out that intrinsic motivation in you to do what needs to be done to pull your grades up to where you want to be at. Now, in conclusion, I hope that now you have a clearer understanding of what it takes to be a top performing student that excels in their academics. Be deliberate with your learning, be consistent with your work, be proactive when it comes to clarifying doubts, and lastly, find your intrinsic motivation. I truly believe that any student can do well academically if they have the right mentality and motivation. Now, if you watched till this point in the video, here's something awesome for you. If you wish to win a copy of our highly in-demand curated notes, you have a chance to do so. The curated notes itself covers the entire syllabus, contain concise concept recaps, commonly tested questions, and work examples with precise answering technique that you need to master to score well in your exams. To stand a chance to win this, all you need to do is to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment on what other topic you'd like us to discuss next. We will select a winner for each video and send the winner a copy of our curated notes for free. So don't miss this awesome reward. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment below right away. That's all, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye-bye.